All right, the fourth chapter, the final chapter, is talking about setup, execution, and training considerations. I just want to kind of yap about my training experience working with athletes, working with clients, and help you kind of understand how to apply the principles from before into your training. And please be mindful that these are my thoughts on variables. What I encourage you to do as a coach, as an athlete, whatever, identify the variables, understand that there is nuance behind the reasoning behind each variable, and everyone is going to have different ideas of how to address a certain variable. So with all of these, I'm going to present the variable. I'm going to present my opinions on how to go through each variable, but I know plenty of coaches that are really solid that will have opinions that go against mine. I know there are plenty of coaches that are really awesome that are going to have the same opinions as mine when it comes to all of these. So I encourage you to develop your own opinions, different, to listen to different coaches. But the concept of identifying training variables and manipulating them as needed, that is a universal concept. And if you're not trying to identify as many variables as possible, you are leaving gains on the table. So the first is the setup hack. A lot of people really like this setup hack where you can kind of follow the instructions and look at the GIF right here. I'm not really a big fan. I've always found that, especially because I tend to be a little bit more glute dominant in my split squat, some days I like to have my feet a little bit closer together. Some days I like to have them closer to the bench. Some days a little further. This kind of locks you into one spot. So for me, because I understand that some days I'm going to like different foot positionings, I always start with body weight split squats and I like start warming up, and then I put a marker of some sort, whether it's a marker, a towel, a dumbbell, whatever it is, right there, and we can see that I know exactly where my foot needs to go. So I warmed up with body weight, worked my way up to the hundreds, and that's how I know exactly where my foot needs to be every single time for that workout. And then the next workout, it might be a little different. The next workout, it might be a little different. But I know at least for that workout where my joints are feeling comfortable, that felt good. And then even as I warmed up, right, like once I grabbed the 30s, I was like, I might need to move this a little bit. And you can make those adjustments with the warm-up weights rather than the super heavy weights where it's going to be very uncomfortable. Foot pressure is another thing. I think it should be an 80-20 split. And this kind of brings us back to what we were talking about in the beginning. The Bulgarian split squat is a unilateral in nature exercise. It's not truly a single leg exercise. That back leg has to work quite a bit because that back leg is your anchor and it's going to help you come back up. So it's needed for stability and for generating force. Now, there's a more popular squat coach that has touched on why he likes a 90%, 10% differential. I just don't think that's a great idea because when you have to think about just putting 10% of pressure through the back leg, you kind of overthink it and then it leads to you just not moving big weight. I would rather have you think like 80-20 or 75-25 and just kind of drive through and use that back leg for support. And if you just think about moving as much weight as possible with as much power, that's going to be way more beneficial for you than kind of playing this mental game of like, am I allocating 10%? What if I did 20%? Is that too much? I never want you to worry about not using a muscle enough. Like you should always use the muscles as much as you can. I think you should always use muscles to the best of their ability, and I think it's totally fine to use your back leg on a split squat. You should use your core muscles on bicep curls. There's all sorts of things that you should do unless you're really trying to isolate a specific muscle. I think you should follow more of like an 80-20 split. That being said, right here, I don't want you to freak out about finding the exact percentage for optimal distribution. That's unrealistic, and it just takes away from good, hard training, which is the top priority. How to load. First of all, if you're holding 2 dumbbells at a time, you don't need to worry about this. If you work with athletes who do hold dumbbells 1 at a time, you very much do need to worry about this. So we can load this ipsilaterally, which means if my right leg is working, my right arm is holding the weight, and then we can load these contralaterally. So if my right leg is working, my left arm is holding the weight. And this contralateral loading is a little bit more similar to our natural walking patterns, and you can try this right now. When you walk, as your left leg goes forward, your right arm is going to go forward, which is why a lot of people prefer contralateral loading and find that it's very comfortable. However, if you prefer something like this, where the dumbbell is on the same side, that's actually going to make your dumbbell a little bit closer to your working leg. So do you get better balance by having something that's more similar to your natural walking pattern, or do you get more balance by doing something where the dumbbell is actually closer to the weight that's moving? it's really person dependent. There's been times in my training career where I thought contralateral was way more stable for me, and then other times where ipsilateral is more stable to me. I know great coaches that load both ways. You should just try them both out, see which one feels most comfortable for you, because they really both do work, and they're both fine options. Now, the last thing that I think is super important is the rest time, because I see a lot of people that will finish a set on one leg and then they switch to the other one without any break. That means you did not train hard enough. You should start the set with your weaker leg. I'm right-handed, so I start with my left leg. Finish the set, rest like 30 to 90 seconds, then you train the other leg, and then you take a nice long rest time, 2 to 3 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, or even 5. Because the goal is to get stronger, not tired. There's an old strength and conditioning mantra that's like, any idiot can make you tired. You know, if I just made you go do 1,000 jumping jacks, you're going to get really tired, but you're not going to get very strong. And if our goal is to get strong, I don't care about how much you're sweating or how out of breath you are. I just want to make sure that we are hitting the weight with good force output, with good stability, and we're getting good stimulus on the targeted muscle and joints, and then we have enough time to recover so that we can do it again. So this is my general recommendation. You should find your own variables that work well for you in terms of training time. Sometimes you might need a little bit more rest after you finish both legs, and maybe you don't need too much rest in between one leg when compared to the other, but those are all decisions for you to figure out on your own. But awesome, that's the end of the book. One thing I do want you to be mindful of is this also does come with a training program that you can run through. It is a 5-week training program that allows you to track your sets, reps, and weights. And there are some videos in the exercise library that I threw in that you can have some extra instructions on some of the exercises that I think you may have never seen before. There's a beginner version and an intermediate advanced version. So both of those are in the button down below. In addition to that, if you want access to the full exercise library and live programming that's updated every 4 to 8 weeks, on the $19 per month membership with Funky Mob, you're going to have that. You're going to have access to weekly group webinars where we're going over form, accountability calls, and your own app to make sure that you are tracking your weights correctly. You're tracking your sleep, your hydration, your weight, your food. Everything gets covered on that for just $19 a month. So go ahead and click on that right now if you want to get started with that. And I would love to see you over there, and would love to see you really take your training to the next level so we can make sure that you are moving like an athlete, you're moving good weight, and you are moving pain-free.